Good morning. Sorry about the audio quality. We're going to be moving fast. We're doing Advent of Code 2020. So I'm going to walk you through how to solve every single one in real time as I'm solving it. We're going to be using Swift and Xcode. We're going to be doing this with a Mac app, but it's going to be the exact same code as if you're an iOS programmer. So whichever you're trying to learn, iOS or Mac, you're in their place. So let's do this. All right, switching over here. So we're going to get Xcode set up first because Advent of Code is timed, and so I want to be done. Things are just ready to rock. The second I open Advent of Code 2020, great. Great. Okay. Looking good. Make sure it runs. Maybe this was a good test. There it goes. Okay, so now for those of you that haven't done Advent of Code before, what Advent of Code is basically a series of programming challenges. Okay, perfect. There we go. We got our hello world. It's a series of programming challenges where you are given sort of a story and you follow along, and then it gives you an input and you have to give back an output. So in this case, I've got my hello world with my main.swift right here. Cool. Let's jump over here. I've never used that template before. Hopefully that doesn't bite me. Day one. After saving Christmas 5 years in a row, you've decided to take a vacation at a nice resort on a tropical island. Surely Christmas will go on without you. The tropical island has its own currency and is entirely cash only. The gold coins used there have a little picture of a starfish. The locals just call them stars. None of the currency exchanges seem to have heard of them, but somehow you'll need to find 50 of these coins by the time you arrive so you can pay the deposit on your own. To save your vacation, you need to get all 50 stars. I'm sure these are just the stars you get for solving puzzles. Okay, I'm going to pay them. Before you leave, the elves in accounting just need you to fix your expense report, which is your puzzle input. Apparently, something isn't quite adding up. Specifically, they need you to find the two entries that sum to 2020 and then multiply those two numbers together. For example, you get an expense report containing these numbers. In this list, the two entries that sum to 2020 are 1721 and 299. Multiplying them together produces this number. So the correct answer is that. Of course, your expense report is much larger. Find the two entries that sum to 2020. What do you get if you multiply them together? Okay, obviously, like I said, this is a race, so we're going to go fast, and then I'll explain later. So we're going to have input 1, input 2. They're both going to, actually these are going to be bars because they're going to change. Actually, I don't even want this. What I want is for I in 0 ... less than, we're going to have a list. It's an input, which is an array of numbers is what it'll be. And we're going to do for everything an input count minus equal 1, or I think. Yeah, so that would go, yep, I think that's what I want. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do for j in 1, is that what I want? So this goes from 0 to the minus 1. I am clearly thinking clearly. I think this one actually needs to be minus 1, and then this one needs to be this. So basically, actually, do I even need? Yeah, I do. Okay, so this will go through all of the numbers. This will go through all the numbers starting on the first. So this will all through all the numbers except for the last one. This will be all the numbers except for the first one, and they're going to move along side by side here. We're going to check all the numbers. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, I can show you input sub I and input sub j. All right, so if I run this, we should get printed out down here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, perfect. So that's printing out everything that we expected. Whoops. Let's get our puzzle input. Okay, as usual, it's just a giant list. So we're going to say, actually, what I'm going to do, because I'm going to do this every single day, I'll move file, Swift file, next, puzzle input. I want it to be clean. Let text input equals this. Okay, so this is just a string literal with all this stuff in it. And so this input is going to be text input dot split by, I'm guessing it's a new line character, and then map to an int $0. Okay, I think that's what I want. And then what we're going to do is just say if input sub I equals input sub j, then not equals, if these added together equals 2020, print input sub I times input sub j, and then return. I don't know if I can return from a scope like this. I would guess that I can't. Yeah, I didn't think so. Break. Okay. It says that that's the answer. Let's see if it actually is. Submit. 1 gold star. Continue to part 2. Part 2. The elves in accounting are thankful for your help. One of them even offers you starfish coin. Okay. Using the above example again, the 3 entries that sum to 2020 are 979. Multiplying them together produces the answer. In your expense report, what is the product? What is the product of the 3 entries that sum to 2020? Okay, so this is pretty easy. So what we want to do is this one's going to go to up to 2 at the very end. This is going to go up to 1, and then this is going to actually go to the very end, and this is going to start at 2. And there we go, and then .k, and .k. I'm gonna multiply them all together. Let's see if it finds it. There we go. Submit. 1 gold star. Completed day 1. Okay. So let's talk about what we just did here. This is for those of you that are unfamiliar with Swift. You have this feature called multi-line string, which is super valuable in this kind of a use case. Basically, all you have to do is you start with 3 quotation marks, and then you can paste your giant blob of text on the next line, and then close it with 3 quotation marks. So I'm probably going to be doing this most days, is just changing this text input here. Next thing. So you can take text and you can split it based on anything you want. So what that means is if we call split and we hand it a /n, that's the new line character. So that means that in our puzzle here, this new line is what it's going to split on, which means that the thing remaining is each of the numbers. Now, the split won't behave nicely if your text isn't formatted nice and clean. So if there's like normal spaces or anything like that, it just won't work. But I know that what they've given us is always going to be pretty nicely formatted. So unless I see like specific bugs, I'm always just going to use this, where I take the input, split it on the new line character. Okay, and then map. Map takes the result. So the result of split is actually going to be an array of strings. So what map does is it takes a string and it turns it into something else. In this case, we're turning it into an integer. Now, I'm force unwrapping this conversion because I know the data, but in practice, this can fail, right? Like you can pass it a string that's not a number, and so this would fail. So this isn't safe to do in real world, but in these kind of programming things where you know the input and it's set, you save yourself a bunch of headache just by throwing an exclamation mark on the end. Okay, so how does this work? This stack of loops. So basically what's happening is we want to go through the array. That's easy. That, if you're going to do that, you would just do 0 through input.count. That would say from the 0th index, which is the beginning of an array, up to input.count, which is, if you know, the length of an array is, or the last index of an array is one less than its count. And so if you do ... less than count, that takes you right up to the very end of an array. Now, in this case, we're not just going through the list once. We're actually going to go through it twice and then 3 times. And so in order to do it 2 and then 3 times without running over the top of each other, what you want to do is because you don't need to, right? So let me show you. I'll throw some comments on here. So this is the first loop. Let's say that our array has 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's say those are the numbers. Now, our loop would go through 0 through input.count minus 2. So that means that it's going to go all except for these last 2. So hopefully, I'm going to copy and paste this so I don't have to retype it. So it goes all the way up, but it doesn't do these last 2. Now, why would you do that? Well, the reason is because the next one, this 4j, is going through 1 through all but the last. So you can see that on my first pass through, where I'm looking at 0 in this list, because I'm going to go through each one, so I'm starting at 0. I'm going to then pair it with something from the second list. Now, there's no reason to pair 0 with 0. The problem specifically said that it's going to be 2 different numbers in the list. So there's no reason to look at 0 and 0. So I'm going to look at 0 and 1, and then 0 and 2, and then 0 and 3. And now I could look at 0 and 4. In fact, I did the first time, but we know that we're actually doing a really complex joining here of 3 arrays. So now you can see that that every number is going to be covered by every combination. In some cases, if you look at our printing, it's going to get covered twice, right? Just because of the way that we're looping over it and we're comparing everything to everything, you're going to get duplicates. That's kind of understood. And that's honestly, if this was properly embedded in a function, this break right here would actually be a return, because what I actually want to do is just stop searching altogether. But programming competition, right? So I'm not that worried about efficiency as long as I get the problem in a fast enough time. So if this was a real function, I would put a return here, and I would wrap this whole thing in a function, find number, whatever, and this return would exit all the way out of the function. And that would make it so that once we had found the 442115152 the first time, it would quit searching, and the fact that it would find the correct answer multiple times isn't a problem. Anyway, so going back to that. So the reason we have these blocked off like this is to minimize the amount of numbers looking at themselves. Okay, so what the end result here, in fact, like what I probably should have done, and actually I wonder if I can just go like this and change this to I and J, and that would make it so that this star at the beginning is actually moving, if that makes sense. Let me run this really quick. Yep, it found the answer once. Okay, so there you go. This is actually probably the more correct answer. So let me simplify this here down to just 2 arrays. So we're going to copy this. So this is problem 2, or part 2. Let's do part 1. So part 1 didn't have the part about K, which means that we don't need K, and which means we don't need K. Okay, which means let's take this here. Okay. Whoops, that is not what I want to copy. Okay, so right now, this part right here, this is going to loop over everything except for the last 2. Okay, that's pretty easy to understand, right? This is, so I will be 0, and then I will be 1, and then I will be 2, but I won't do the last 2 items in the list. Now, this gets interesting here, because we're doing, I changed it to be for J in I. So I, if you remember, we originally were doing this. Whoops. This is what we were originally doing. Oh, and I don't want 2. I want 1, and I want this to go away because it's the first problem. Okay, that's better. So we originally were going through all but the last one, and we were cutting off the first one. And that was going to find us duplicate answers. So the real thing that we want to do is say this J actually starts, instead of starting at 1, it starts at I. So the result of that is that the first pass through, it's going to exclude, yeah. So I actually want I plus 1, I think. See, this is the thing, like, this is why I'm doing this live, is I feel like some people feel like that people that have been programming for a long time are getting these, get the same answer down here. The people that program for a long time are going to get these perfect first try, and I'm not going to. This is going to be like me just spinning my brain as fast as possible to just get an answer. There we go. I think that is actually the last answer, correct thing. Okay, so the reason why here is because on the first pass through, I is going to be the 0th index, and so I plus 1 is the first index, which means it's going to skip this, okay, which is cool. That's what we want. Now, the second time through that we go through the whole list, I is going to start at 1, which means J is going to start at 2. That's going to skip all the way to the index number 2, so the third answer. And then very finally, we're going to do, I is going to start at 3, and so J is going to start at 3. Now the reason why, and this is funny because like clearly I've done this kind of problem before, and so I intuitively knew to do this -1 at the end, like don't overflow the end of the array. I was like aware if that is an issue, but like for some reason just spaced to do this part, which is the other important part. So the other important part is I plus 1. Now the reason why this -1 is important when you're going to do this is because if you didn't, what would happen is you would go all the way to the end with I, and then I plus 1 would be past the end of the array, which is a crash. You can't go, you're not allowed to go past the end of an array. So yeah, that's kind of funny. There you go. That's for people that are beginners out there learning to code. This is, something that, like, clearly, like I said, I have intuitively, I knew what kind of answer would look like, and I just moved too fast and missed part of it, which happens all the time. Like, if you're going to learn to code, you don't need to get these all right the first try. Okay, so that said, that is, I don't need any of this now. That is the solution to part 1 and part 2. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. This is, day 1, part 1 and part 2. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. We're going to be doing this every day for Advent of Code. So if you want to learn, you want to follow along and see how somebody that's been coding for a decade struggles to find answers to coding challenges, meet us back here. Make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell so that you don't miss it. Okay, thanks. See you guys. Bye.